In spirit of the theme for the day, innovation and entrepreneurship, we have a great panel, a lot of friends, some I've just met, but some I've known for quite some time. What we want to discuss today is innovation and entrepreneurship. Innovation, for me at least, is tightly linked to entrepreneurship. Innovation is to create new things, to challenge business as usual, to challenge status quo, to come up with unique things. And entrepreneurship is to make it happen. So they're very tightly linked. So what I would like to do is to have everybody introduce themselves, not only their name and where they're from and what company, but a little bit address these two things. So you have 2 minutes for each. So we'll start with Mr. Shamim first.
Hi, I'm Shaukat Shameem. I have a company in the US named Dezine. We are creating a funding platform for what we call undiscovered designers. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. This is my 5th company, and I also had the fortune to be in Yahoo when they were first starting up. I was a venture capitalist for a few years. And my company's been mostly in media. I've done 2 companies in advertising, and this one is in e-commerce and in the convergence of content and e-commerce. You're talking about innovation. Innovation is actually is in the core of your belief when you start companies, that you believe in my opinion, you get agitated by for the existence or lack of existence of something, and that agitation gives the birth of a company or an idea. And soon you kind of iterate on that, and if you're lucky enough, you get to create something great.
Hello, my name is Ihsan Jawad. I'm an internet entrepreneur. I was, I guess, amongst the first wave of internet entrepreneurs in the region. I started a company called Zawya.com back in 2000. We just exited a couple of months ago to Thomson Reuters, so I've been through the full cycle, if you like, of setting up and exiting an internet business. I've gone on to found 2 companies, one in the job space called Laymoon.com and its parents, actually. So I founded the baby and the parents, which is Honeybee Tech Ventures, hoping to incubate other the consumer sort of focused internet plays and trying to make it happen. So I'm on a second act, if you like.
All right. My name is Fahad Khan. I'm the founder and CEO of OnePublic. OnePublic is one of the first and one of the largest Facebook marketing API developers in the world. We're headquartered in New York City, but we have a huge team of great engineers in Lahore, Pakistan, which is my hometown, where I was born and raised. I went to school in Sweden. At OnePublic, what we do is our mission is to unlock the potential of next-gen marketing for enterprises and small and local businesses. And what we do every day is make sure that the future is that of social. And all the antisocial major players, including Google, do not get the piece of that. Now, reverting to the point of innovation, I think innovation is pretending that you're talking to the whole world and having a room in front of you which is empty. That's one part of being innovative. I majored in innovation management, so I kind of know a lot more than normal people know about innovation. So I'm not going to go into the academic part of the innovation, and I'll stick to the lessons from the ground. Innovation is basically, simply put, doing something old in a new way, and or doing something new in an old way. Doing something new in a new way is invention. So with that, I'll pass on to you.
Thank you. My name is Rabea Ataya. I'm one of the co-founders and serve as the CEO of an organization called Bayt.com. And Bayt is essentially a marketplace that brings together opportunity and talent. Today we serve about 9 million professionals who have placed their CV on the site, and that's growing at the rate of about 10,000 new professionals a day. And there are tens of thousands of employers who use the platform in order to find talent and to hire it. We are probably the longest standing independent commercial internet business in the region. We've been around for 12 years right now. And during that period of time, it's quite obvious just to stay around while a lot of the tech industry and internet industry has changed. We've had to innovate quite a bit, and I've enjoyed the journey.
Good afternoon. I'm Naif and Mutawa, the founder and CEO of Teshkeel Media Group, and creators of the 99, which is the first group of superheroes based on our regional archetypes that have actually gone global. It's the first time that IP from this part of the world is global. Right now it's on TV in South Africa, Australia, Middle East, North Africa, some parts of Europe. We launch in North America in the spring. But basically grew the company from through 3 rounds of financing, from a comic book to a theme park, which launched in Kuwait 4 years ago, to the TV series that I just talked to you about. And I'd love to show you a quick clip of what I'm talking about.
It is said that all the darkness of the world could be shattered by the light in just one pure heart.
Imagine then the hope that would spread if 99 of the pure-hearted came together as one.
These stones, they chose us to do something big.
Who are you people? We have much in common with you. The Noor stone is one of 99. Noor is Arabic for light. Each bestows a powerful gift upon its bearer. The stone was right to choose you. Now you must choose your future.
It's pretty clear. I'm part of something bigger. A new family, maybe. The 99. The stones suddenly appearing now?
I believe it is the will of the stones themselves. They're bringing you stone bearers together for a great purpose. The gemstone was not meant for revenge.
Then what were they made for?
To make things better.
Mine has made things better. For me.
All of us who have newer stones need to work together to help everyone else.
No one else can use your stone. The stone was meant for you.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Kamel. I am born and raised in Palestine and moved to the U.S. quite some time ago and spent over 28 years studying and working in the U.S. In a lot of jobs, including starting 4 companies. So I have both the entrepreneurship and innovation as well. I also studied innovation management on the hands of some very great academics. 5 years ago, I came here to Dubai and to the region on a mission to increase the innovation throughput of companies and individuals in this region. Just last year, I also put more emphasis on linking the innovation capabilities of corporate with entrepreneurs. So bridging these two, because that's a partnership. So let's start by talking about lessons learned. I would like to throw in a controversial question first, because I haven't heard anybody addressing this issue throughout the conference. So the question is, they say that innovation starts with failure and it ends with growth. So how would you respond to this? What's the lesson learned? that you would share with the audience? So again, we'll start from the end.
I don't know about failure, but it's definitely innovation starts with what I call your fear of failure. I think innovation starts with or a good innovation starts with your observation of why something fails, why something succeeds. And it can only be called an innovation if it has growth. But the definition of growth, in my opinion, is very subjective. Like you can argue that a lot of people actually think growth means revenue, growth means dollar, but it doesn't have to. Actually, some of the greatest companies in the world, they define what growth means. For example, in 1996, when Yahoo went public, we defined growth. And we sold it to Wall Street that growth means page views. That has no relationship with how much money you make. And we succeeded, and we created billions of dollars of wealth creation in that. Facebook did that in the recent years. Now you can argue how good or bad they're doing, but they're actually playing the same thing. But at the end, when the company matures, clearly that those two axes, growth, how you define it and how you're perceived, they come together, right? And you make money, but then you become like almost a really large company. It doesn't matter.
So you're not going to share failure or fear of...
Oh, I failed a lot. I actually, I will tell you a funny story. One of the greatest entrepreneurs I ever met, he and I became, he's Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn. He is actually my investor and a close friend. He and I became very good friends because, first time I met him, I told him that all the things I used some words that I do not want to use here, but I told him how many times I failed. I fail every time. I fail every things. But that's okay, because as an entrepreneur, it is not how you fail, it's how you get up. And you have to get up. Failing is inevitable. You cannot be afraid of it. Actually, much easier said than done, but you will be a better entrepreneur if you make your name by getting up. And I think that's what, where we are from, Silicon Valley, does a really good job. We celebrate failures. Right? You actually say you fail, hence you learn more, you will do better. And I think that's what makes that part of the world so special, because we do that only that thing very differently from the rest of the world.
Thanks. Jawad?
Yeah, celebrating failure is a concept that I have difficulty sort of accepting. I mean, I don't know, a lot of people talk about celebrating failure, but obviously people... that you don't set off to fail, right? You set off hopefully to change things and to come up with new ways and innovative ways. You do need to. I mean, there is I agree with you about getting up again. When there's even a song about that. If you first don't succeed, dust yourself and try again, right? I've had many failures in the two journeys the two company journeys that we started. But it's an iteration, it's a trial and error. I think innovation is definitely a trial and error process. You always say, "Oh, I have a great idea," and then when you come to actually apply it and put, if you like, put pen to paper and so on, you'll find all kind of problems. I mean, I can give you examples of failures if you like. You talked about earlier about this part of the world doesn't talk of examples of failure. I think, for example, in Zawya, one of the things we tried to do when the recession hit in 2008, and we were in the financial sort of industry, and so we were hit hard. I tried to basically open up the platform and make it accessible to the crowd in an attempt to to have it open source, if you like. And it was a big bet, which the board originally backed me up with. And for 2 years, from 2008 to 2010, I tried very hard to make Zawya an open platform which takes contribution and serves the business, if you like, community. But we failed. We failed miserably, actually. And as a result, it was so bad that I had to, there was a disagreement between me and the board in the direction that it ended me in saying, okay, look, I wanted to continue and learn from that failure, but basically the board decided to wipe that out and go back to where we started. So I stepped down as a CEO and stayed as a vice chairman. But at the end, the company went on to do great things, and we exited. But failure is inevitable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I've got a different view on failure. I think failure is, I'm not sure if it's inevitable or not, but it's necessary sometimes. And there are two types of failures. The failures that you wish to and you do celebrate, and two big examples that I know of where the failure must be celebrated is Steve Jobs' first era, right? Him getting booted out of Apple, right? Inventing the personal computer, starting history. So that was a failure, not of execution. It was a failure of not getting the right growth. So innovation is not innovation until it's financially feasible. So if it becomes financially feasible, it grows. That's the real innovation. And if you come up with the best product in the world and you create something really new, but it's not able to bring in financial returns, it's a failure. So those failures, if they're very innovative, they ought to be celebrated. The other example is that of Sean Parker. Sean Parker with Napster, he really revolutionized how music is distributed, right? He failed, right? But he went on to help create Facebook, and now with Spotify. So those are failures that you ought to celebrate. And then, besides this, I really struggle with celebrating failure because it's inevitable and you have to fail. You have to fail over and over again. You fail every day, right? That's not the failure that you want to celebrate, and you have to fail fast. So if you're an innovator, or if you want to be an innovator, you have to fail fast, very cost effectively to learn from some of the failures, not all of the failures, and then move on.
Thank you. So I would disagree with the premise that growth is predicated on failure. And I think that comes back to not the definition of growth, but rather the definition of failure. To me, the definition of failure is giving up. So when you quit something, you failed. If you're continuing to attempt, you haven't failed. Now, by definition, if you've quit something, you're not going to grow afterwards on that thing. So I think the premise is in and of itself a faulty one. I think if one defines failure as quitting, then you cannot grow thereafter. If one defines failure as a mistake that happens over time from which one learns and then grows, well, that's a part of growing and evolving, whether it's as a human being or as an organism or an organization. And I think failure is an important part. Making mistakes is an important part of the journey. Failing is not an important part of the journey.
Just one very quick point. I think quitters are not failures. Quitting is losing. Those are losers. So I would differentiate. Failing at doing something really great is something totally different from quitting. Quitters are losers. They would never get closer to being innovative, because if you can innovate, one of the biggest, great artists, paraphrasing Steve Jobs, good artists copy and great artists steal. So if you, even at the cost of stealing something to innovate, you got to innovate. So those who quit, they're losers. They're not, innovators.
Yeah.
The good thing about being from Kuwait is you don't have to fall to dust yourself off. You can just dust yourself off while you go for a walk. I guess my example from the trenches with failure, the 99 is the second IP that I developed. The first one I did in my mid-20s and won an award from UNESCO, and it got to my head. And so when I was negotiating with the Ministry of Information, as is a hazard of doing the job I do, I let my ego get in the way. They wanted me to make some changes. I wouldn't do it, and I quit writing at the age of 27. I could do Angry Young Man. I could never do Starving Artist. So, and that I had a 5-year hiatus, but when I came back with my superheroes, I had learned kind of, I mean, I was older, obviously, and hopefully wiser, and when I again had a bit of issues with some ministries, I was able to navigate those much better based on my learnings the first time around. And that subject became, when I applied to business school, that failure was the subject of my failure essay. All I had to do was change a few words, but I wouldn't do it. And what good is the book on the shelf?
Okay.
So.
Excellent. Well, on my part, I actually agree with many of what you said. I personally, as I said, I started 4 companies. Failure for me means wrap it up very quickly, learn from it, and start something new, completely quick. So I personally failed twice. This is my 5th attempt, by the way, but 2 of them did well, and 2 of them actually put me under bankruptcy. And so I was very proud of that back in the 90s. It was extremely, extremely hard. But you learn. You learn how you can get up quickly. You learn how you avoid some of the mistakes and such. So that's why, for example, there are things like, or methodologies came up, like lean startup. Lean startup is based on the statistics, or based on the fact that almost 90% or more of startups fail. Why? Because they try to build a space shuttle, for example. They try to spend the next 20 years building their product. They don't really start quickly. They don't test. They don't get the customer buy-in first, and all of that. Also, there are some new concept even in conferences called celebrating failure, right? There are some conferences that are popping out how not only to celebrate success, but celebrating failure, because you learn even more from some of these examples as well. So there are many of these things. So I tend to agree with a lot of you. So now let's move from innovation to startups or entrepreneurs. You all started something. You're all into this space. Some of you in product, some of you in service, some of you in a business model. But they tell you some of the most innovative startups, they start with the 3 elements of innovation and creativity, which is copy, transform, and combine. Copy, transform, and combine what makes a lot of very innovative startups succeed. And a prime example, before Google, there was a Yahoo, and there was an Alta Vista, and there was a need for whatever they're doing. But they copy, transform, and combine. So what do you think?
Somebody used the word, a great artist steals, and that's actually often true. And you would copy, and it's good observation to actually see what's working, what's not. I would actually say Yahoo still exists. But I actually will take it back a little bit. You can do all those stuff. You can actually copy it and create something. I didn't do well on that because I'm just not. I don't have that in me. For me, it was very personal. Of all the 5 companies I created, and it started with. And I have a thing that I would slightly change those. I would actually say it is very important, what I call training, right? You actually, training is very important for yourself when you're creating companies, but no amount of training will make you successful unless you miss the other 2 things, which I call inspiration and experience. And if you think about what that means is, I think greatest companies are started because of inspiration. It is not because of anything else. And your inspiration could be that you see the problem better than anybody else, and you borrow some elements from existing solutions, hence you copy, and you find a better way and faster way. Cisco Systems made their name by doing that, right? Better, faster, cheaper, they call it. But inspiration is the first one. But the second one is experience, which actually comes down to you're playing in a rough sea, for lack of better words. So you would not actually know what to do. Like, everything will look very hazy to you when you're starting a company. So experience means you will actually know what not to get excited about, and what to respond to. And that is a very tough thing. So often, I think good companies, seek experience, right? And at the end, you need training. So inspiration, experience, and training are the three things, in my opinion, are the most important thing to make it what I call a significant company. Creating companies are actually very easy. It takes about like 20 minutes to start a company, and it costs $0 to start a company. Anybody can create a company. But making it really, taking an idea and making it a business is a really difficult task. And that's when you have to go down and really understand why you're doing it. Because it's not an easy life by far. I mean, all the great stories you see in the movies, they're movies, trust me. Your real life is much, much harder. So you got to know and ask yourself why you're doing it. And if you don't have that inspiration, you will actually leave the battlefield way too quickly.
Yeah, let me, sorry, I meant to do it the opposite this time, but maybe we'll go back to Mutawa.
So with the 99, that's exactly what we did. I mean, we used the language of comic books and superheroes, which is a language that people transact in. Superman, Batman, that's the language. And what I did is I took, but it's known that Hollywood has been using archetypes from biblical archetypes forever, and a lot of the stories are traceable back to the Bible. Now, it's not religious storylines, but they're the same kind of. They say there are only 17 stories, and they just get recycled in Hollywood. And so what I did is I took that thinking and I applied it to our culture. So what was new was the book on which the archetypes were based, nothing else. It was the same language. And so just as a practical example, I mean, that was, if you will, the innovation of what we had done. We had based the writing on archetypes from this region versus archetypes from the West.
Okay, Rabea?
I would perhaps make the argument that nothing in the world is entirely unique in all of its components. Right. So everything in the world draws on the experiences of human beings that have preceded it. My experience in the region generally with startups and businesses is it makes sense in this region to a large degree emulate business models that exist elsewhere and to innovate significantly with the localization. Because the local markets are complex in a way that perhaps no other markets in the world are. And a lot of what an entrepreneur has to think about is how do I take a concept that might work in a market that has low friction, such as the United States or perhaps Europe, and apply it to a high friction market, such as in the Middle East. And that takes a lot of bandwidth. And so, my general take, whether I'm investing in a new business or looking to start one up, is can I take a business model that works somewhere and really find out how to make it work in a geography that is essentially a challenging one? And as a result of that process, you end up innovating tremendously and looking quite different from what your US or European counterparts would look like.
I think first of all, I'll agree with what you've said. I'll come back to it in a bit. So I think, Gab, copy, I don't know. I mean, because, Shamim would know that, I'm based in New York City. That's where I started my business. I've started businesses before in Lahore, in Gothenburg, in Sweden, and London, and failed. Right, so I don't have a lot of experience there, but definitely that of New York City and Silicon Valley, which is the hub of entrepreneurship globally. So what I've seen in the kind of entrepreneurs I've met, Pandora is opposite to my office. Twitter, Foursquare is nearby somewhere, and around 2 or 3 blocks of Union Square. That's where most of the startups in New York City are there. So most of the entrepreneurs that I've known, they don't copy. They're either original thinkers or they steal. So if you got to be great, you have to come up with something really, really new. Something, of course, it's inspired by. So I agree from the inspiration standpoint. You have to be inspired. It's always, Google says that. Google's stance says that Android is inspiration from iOS, but it's a copy. It's a stolen product, according to Steve Jobs himself. So I don't know of any great entrepreneurs who copy and be successful, except for the local reasons. He's right, because when you're in the U.S., not even Europe. Europe is similar to, it's London and Germany and France and the rest of the European countries. It's not a big market. It's very hard for entrepreneurs, even in London, to break out with something really big and something really great. So winding down the conversation, I think you have to think, from a global standpoint, you have to be very innovative or outright steal if you can. But majority of the entrepreneurs that I know of in the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, India, elsewhere, you know, it's a copycat culture that we have here, right, in the East, and that's part of the reason is that you know, the regulation regime is not so liberal to allow entrepreneurs to disrupt. So I think, you know, coming down, my stance to all of this is somewhere in the middle of thinking original and stealing is disrupting. That means that if I go out and disrupt the Google's advertising business based on my enterprise tools that are built on top of Facebook's API, for example, you know, that's something new. It's definitely not copying Google, but, you know, trying to disrupt with them. So I think if you add the competition part to thinking original and disruption, then you get to, you know, great ideas and great outcomes.
Okay. Copying is not a good idea, right? And I don't think we give the nations who copy, which we know, we don't give them a lot of credit. I think borrowing rather than stealing is a good idea. You know, I was in Disneyland this summer, and I got to a little bit understand where the creativity comes from here, which is basically, you know, what he does, this guy, or his concept is basically crossing different animals together to create a new beast, right? So we have the I don't know, famous Disney characters with a head of a certain animal and the body of another one, and it makes a really sort of innovative and very creative new being, basically. So copying from the guy in front, exactly, it's a pretty dumb idea, actually. But copying or borrowing from the peripheral is a good idea to solve the problem at hand. And if I may just basically share with you, I mean, we in Honeybee now, we're trying to institute an innovation process, if you like, if there is such a thing. I mean, a lot of people think innovation is, and I would agree with you and agree with Rabea, that innovation is a continuous thing. There is nothing really original. But there is some sort of a process at work here, which is the way we see it is you've got to focus at solving a problem, right? So it starts with identifying a problem that is worth solving. That problem has to be big. It has to be true, right? It is not something that you fictitiously sort of invented. And it has to be affecting a lot of people. That's exactly when innovation starts. Depending on how original your problem is and how true it is, then hopefully the solutions that would follow, and there will be always solutions, it will define the innovation, so to speak.
Right. Well, just one more thing, a real-world example. And I feel really terrible in the past 5 months that top 4 and 5 of my competitors have been acquired for over $1.5 billion by Google, Salesforce, and Oracle. And I was one of the first to start. So I think, you know, the dilemma of being original is that you want to do stuff that no one else has done in a combinatory way, but those who are really good at stealing, not borrowing, but stealing, are able to have more success. Like, you know, the biggest competitor I had, Buddy Media, sold for $800 million to Salesforce. And, you know, I feel pain every day, right?
Yeah, but they must have innovated at something else, right? They must
right.
have
Oh, absolutely. No, what I'm saying is that
execution.
As they grew, as they created the market, I refused to copy them. I should have copied them. I should have followed the path and, you know, admitted and sucked it up that, hey, listen, I'm a follower. You know, I'm not the innovator in that market. So they created the market. They were the innovator. They created the whole market.
So that's why it's 3 words. It's copying, transform, and combine. You cannot copy and then you just sit on the copy. You actually transform it, you combine it with a new business model, you combine it with new things or from different industries, that makes it very creative. And whether you want to call it stealing, borrowing, but at the end, you're combining. Even, they tell you, if you open a Mac computer today, there is almost 70% of it copies. From the Xerox Alta first, there is from other type of technologies that were there, but they were able to transform it and then also combine it with the needs of the customers in a different business model. That's what some of this.
I think you're absolutely right, but that's from an academic standpoint, that's a total different topic, because when you're innovating, there has to be some part that's really original.
Original.
Right? But when you get to the point that you're talking about, I'm taking copying out, but definitely combining and doing process innovation. That's really the part of the efficiency part, right? For example, Google Plus. Let's take Google Plus, right? It's the latest effort that Google has had. It's part of efficiency, right? But it's not so much that of an innovation, because there's a balance that you need to have between innovation and efficiency, because innovation is a very messy process. It's really hard to innovate. It's a messy process. It's organized chaos in your mind, in your teams, in your companies, and when you grow big and there's stuff that starts to work well, you got to make it efficient. And then you incrementally, the architectural innovation or disruptive innovation is hard, but incremental innovation or imitative innovation is easy.
Excellent. So let's move on a different topic, last one before we open it up for questions. For entrepreneurs, especially in this part of the world, innovative entrepreneurs, if you think about it, you cannot survive being just local, serving the local market. The local market is small, it's not homogeneous. Also, so that's number one. So they say, think global, start local, but you have to think global. So the second one, so you can address them both at the same time. Let's not fool ourselves. We're never going to have an exit like a Google or a Yahoo or even an Instagram or a Facebook. What is the best opportunities for exits for entrepreneurs who have very innovative ideas? So let's start from here again. First one, local, go global, and then exits.
I made sure from day one that this was something that could be global. I mean, asking for money, raising money for a project in media that's just for the local markets is like certain death of the project, because there are so many whims out there, various ministries that can close you down. So from day one, I made sure that the 99 were from 99 different countries, just in case they weren't allowed here, couldn't get visas. I made sure that that the IP was protected in New York through a sister company. I made sure everything was taken care of that way. Thank God we didn't have the problems I expected, but that was the way we had to think about it. In terms of exits and stuff, for us, because we've created something. Obviously I'm biased, but something pretty special that IP from here that's gone global. There's certain places like Abu Dhabi who have built these amazing, what I call flagpoles, right? Amazing infrastructure in media, but they have no flags. And you can't throw money at something to create IP. And we've been in the business of importing IP forever. And this is an opportunity. We've actually been exporting it. So for us, a natural exit would be being part of some bigger media company that is actually looking towards having their own IP to leverage versus just importing it from outside.
So there are opportunities to exit?
I believe so.
Right.
I mean, for what we're doing, I believe so. And I mean, I don't think, yeah, so I'll stop. There's time.
That's okay.
Time. It's okay.
Go ahead, quickly, time.
So, starting with the international question, when we started off Bayt, our feeling was no single Middle Eastern market would be sufficient to give us scale for us to operate in. And so we focused on a regional play, and we quickly opened up 12 offices in the region to ensure the fact that we weren't limited to one particular geography. Over time, we've realized that the Middle East and North Africa isn't enough for us, because the internet by its very nature is global, and ultimately your customer base as well as your competition can come globally. And so it's become a top priority of the company right now to actually expand outside of the region, which is a challenge, but one that we're very excited about, because the initial premise of the organization was to be a globally recognized and admired Middle Eastern brand. And we believe that's possible, and we feel it's a shame that a lot more Middle Eastern companies don't try to be global in the way that the 99 is being global. The second part of the question is with regards to exit. So I've personally been involved in 3 businesses that are Middle Eastern that have either fully exited or very significantly exited. The vast majority of the shares have been sold to others. And in each of those cases, the multiples we got were premiums to what the multiples were in the West. So when you talk about do exits exist, they do. Do they come at high multiples? They do come at high multiples, because there is a certain advantage to being able to create a great franchise in a difficult market. And for a competitor to come in, they may prefer to buy that franchise at a premium in order to be able to play in that market. That being said, I do not believe that is the measure of a success of a business. So exiting a business, when you think about the success of Google or Apple, it's not because they exited, but because they're actually gobbling everything else up. I mean, it's a beautiful business when, a la Aramex, you can go out and be a global brand and acquire businesses rather than be acquired. And so I think we spend too much time in the Middle East glorifying someone selling their business and being transactional, and we spend too little time glorifying people who've built successful institutions that can outshine and outsurvive them. And so exits do exist, but they're not necessarily a good thing, is my thought on that.
Well, again, I'll compare it to Europe, and I'll give a couple of examples from this region. It's really hard for people in Europe to start businesses as well. You know, entrepreneurs in London have a tough time raising a $5 million Series A. And if you were in New York City or Silicon Valley, you can actually go to Shakat Shameem and raise $5 million, right? So it's very easy. So entrepreneurship capital of the world is America, you know, and the culture that's there is currently not replicable. So, but there have been few successes where companies from outside have come in and have had amazing impact on humanity. Like a lot, they've touched billions or hundreds of millions of people. You know, for example, Skype came from, you know, Swedish. They're based, you know, one of the guys is Swedish, one of the guys is Danish who founded Skype. Spotify is another Swedish example. It's a very innovative country. There's not much coming out of UK, for example, right? But whenever it comes, it goes into the lead market. That's the US. So unless you're in the US, you have to be successful in the US to be a global disruptor, global leader in your niche, right? So that means, what that means is that the lessons are that absolutely, from this region, absolutely, you can have exits like Facebook's, or, you know, successes like Facebook or Instagram, but the failure has been what you just said, glorifying, oh, you know what, we're a regional brand. It's not about regional anymore. And a few examples I can give you from India, there have been many businesses which are global, from Infosys to you know the consulting companies. From Pakistan, I know of my mentor Zia, who invented Invisalign. It's not only innovation, but he changed forever changed the way people straighten their teeth. Right? It's a $3 billion company today. He was booted out of his company before he was 29. But that's innovation coming right out of Pakistan, and right after 9/11. At NASDAQ, the stock price dropped, and he was booted away from the seat of CEO. He was chairman. He sold his stock and started another company, TRG. You know, raised $100 million from Karachi Stock Exchange. That's IPO at birth, and went on to acquire all call centers and a lot of customer service and CRM companies in the U.S. and became a top 5 brand again. So. And 2 other examples from the region, I think the big ones are, I think, and they're really big examples that I'm going to give, but you know, if you follow suit, you know, take inspiration, and small startups can do that. And the first one is Sheikh Talal, right, where he's invested into Citigroup. He put in $300 million in Twitter, right? He's invested heavily into the U.S. companies. So, and the other is Sheikh Nihan bin Mubarak al Nihan, right, who's the single largest investor in Pakistan, right? He's put in $1 billion into Alvared and Batin and these telecom companies, and that's a huge, but at a very large scale. It doesn't mean that if these guys are doing, because they're billionaires and they can do it at a large scale, the small guys and small entrepreneurs can't. No, they can. But you have to think globally from the day one, and just like you've said, you know, start to find a partner in the U.S. You know, start global. Don't brand yourself as a Middle Eastern brand.
Just for sake of time, Jawad, you thought global? You acted local?
Well, as far as the internet is concerned, you know, the saying is you go big or go home, right? So it's not going to happen in the Middle East, as you said, for many reasons we won't go into. So our choice is to go actually the complete opposite way, which is hyper-local, and do businesses that are profitable, right? And like any business in the world, if you're profitable, you'll find an exit, period. Someone will buy you.
Okay.
So that's
very
the
good.
bottom line.
Last words on that?
I would say this exit part. I think starting or thinking too quickly about exit is the wrong way to go. I mean, all the great companies, again, they exited really big. They never started with that. And you should not think, like in our history, we always thought, like, there's not going to be another Yahoo, Google, Facebook. I mean, the history keeps repeating itself. So I think there will be more. The best part of our wealth creation is still ahead of us. You got to believe in that.
Excellent. So we'll open up for 3 questions very quickly. Questions? Making it easy on us? Nobody looks like. Okay, yes.
Hi, my name is Sajjad. I'm a young entrepreneur. Question to all of you, anyone who can pick it up. What are the key elements to initially building a team? The right structure to build a successful team?
Jawad, you build a team?
Well, I guess you need to define the roles first. But beforehand, I think the culture is the most important thing in building a business. So that gets set from day one, and the founder or the CEO always sets the culture, and then thereafter you need to think about the task I need. So don't get people on board because you like them or because they're cool or whatever. Just focus on the task needed and bring the right skills for that.
Anybody want to add?
Great people you would love to work with. I think there's nothing more important. So I think liking people is extremely important. It's not the only reason, but you will be working with these people day in and day out, and getting to a large degree, it's like a marriage. You got to make sure that marriage works, and you got to pick your partners and the people, your founding team, really well. And there's no better way than people you enjoy the company of and who have similar ethical values that you do.
And if someone becomes a grab on you, cut them loose immediately, as soon as possible.
Okay, excellent. One more question? Anybody? All right, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you all so much. I think it's really inspiring to hear firsthand about all of these kinds of possibilities.